what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
Whoa. He could throw every Republican in jail.
Well, Joe Biden could just arrest every Republican. They are warped. Let's turn to the geniuses over at The View. It was Whoopi Goldberg who had to deliver the news. They went on the air right when this decision came down, and take a look at the funeral they were having.
The Supreme Court has just ruled unanimously that Colorado courts cannot keep you-know-who off the state's ballot for engaging in insurrection, finding that a state cannot make a call that could have a national impact on a federal election. Of course, unless it's about a woman's right to choose, but let's not get into that.
That's ignorant as well. What does the one have to do with the other? A state can't make a decision that's going to elect the outcome of a federal election as it would here in the Electoral College. And by the way, states do have the right to make decisions about the abortion issue. In fact, overturning Roe v. Wade gave the power back to the states, and it in no way affects an election. I mean, directly it doesn't, but the anger and contempt and venom in Whoopi Goldberg's voice there was palpable, and it didn't get any better when they handed it over to the lawyer, Sonny Hostin.
So that's why this decision was unanimous in judgment. But if you read the dissent by Justices Sotomayor and Kagan and also Jackson, they are saying the Supreme Court went too far here because they answered a question that wasn't before them. The only question that was before this court was, can a state do this? Instead, what they did was they insulated all alleged insurrectionists from future challenges to their holding federal office. And it is a tenet of Supreme Court law. I am a Supreme Court a bar admitted attorney. It says what it does today, the court should have left undone. And we always learn that in law school. The Supreme Court should just answer the question before it. And I had far too much hope that the court would be united in this and not overstep in favor of Donald Trump.
Let me just break down what she's saying here because it's critically important. Because the Supreme Court said, you know, this transcends just Donald Trump, which is, by the way, what they're supposed to do. It's not supposed to be about Donald Trump. It's supposed to be about the principles. It's supposed to be about the Constitution. You want to talk about overstepping? Look at what the Colorado State Supreme Court did in overstepping. Look at what the left is doing. Look at how sad and upset she is, the contempt she's got for these so-called institutions that they're supposed to hold in such high esteem. But when it doesn't go their way, suddenly burn it all the hell down, right? What they said was, this isn't just about Donald Trump. You can't do this at all. This is up to Congress to do. It's called separation of powers. It's kind of the foundational building block of our constitutional republic. And one other thing, calling everybody insurrectionists. I know it's become this clever little jab that people in the media, specifically left-wingers, like to use, but sadly you see it used oftentimes on some of your favorite conservative or right-of-center cable news channels. They use this word insurrection. Can I tell you something? There have been over 1,000 people arrested for the events of January 6th. They have spent more money on any investigation or any federal police action in the history of the United States of America on investigating, arresting, trying, and prosecuting people involved in the events of January 6th. And do you know how many of those people have been charged with and or convicted with insurrection? Do you know how many? None. None of them. Not Donald Trump and not the grandma with the MAGA hat standing at the pillar because the nice friendly policeman opened up the door and let her walk into the rotunda. None of them have been charged with insurrection. But here's Sonny Hostin just blithely saying, you know, all these insurrectionists, it's not just Trump, it's all the insurrectionists. There are literally not. She's a student of the law. She's got the bar qualification for the Supreme Court. Words matter, counselor. There are, legally speaking, literally no insurrectionists from January 6th. None. You can say some of them are trespassers. You can say some of them are vandals. You can say some of them are disruptors of a legal process or official government process. You can even say some of them are unpermitted paraders because they've literally been arrested for that. But you can't legally call any of them insurrectionists because they haven't been charged with insurrection. That's what. But if you're on The View, or even worse, if your main source of news and information is The View, well, you're angry today. You're angry today because of Sunny Hostin.
And I think what we saw was a court where justices that behaved in a partisan manner, and that disappointed.
Yeah, thank you, MRC and the folks at Newsbusters for that one. Yeah, partisan. It's a 9-0 decision is partisan. There's no pleasing these people. More on The View, though, here, because the one really important takeaway in one of these concurring decisions, or technically two of the concurring decisions, one with 3 justices and one with a solitary justice, the most important thing is what their body parts were. Leave it to The View to tell you all about the fact that women thought one way and men thought another.
Amy Coney Barrett, though, jumped on that opinion about the overstep of the punishment, that it shouldn't be left then to Congress.
Yeah, she had a concurring judgment.
Yeah, concurring judgment, which I thought was important because we do talk so much about the partisanship of a group of people that should not be partisan. So that was reassuring to me. And of course, it was for women that were talking about that part. It didn't surprise me. I'd started to gain faith, as Sunny would tell us, like, this is going to get him. And I was like, But seeing it, I now get the chaos which would ensue. And I think it's important when you.
I'm gonna let you finish there, dear. But did you notice that? This is a legal proceeding. This is a legal proceeding at the highest level of our nation's infrastructure of jurisprudence. And the proceeding couldn't be more serious when it comes to maintaining any societal norms in our constitutional republic. And that is the role of the states in determining who is eligible and not to be on a ballot so that we, the people, can vote for them. But instead, for the ladies on The View and the ladies who watch The View, the entire thing boiled down to, this is going to get him. This is going to get him. And that, in a nutshell, tells you everything that's wrong with every legal proceeding against Donald Trump that we're seeing play out right now. You think it's a coincidence that all of these trials are happening in 2024, the presidential election year? From the E.G. Carroll case to the Alvin Bragg so-called hush money case, which is really about a non-disclosure agreement, to the classified documents case, to the insurrection case, to the Fani Weiss case down in Atlanta about the post-January 6th events, or actually the post-election events, and the attempts to actually get a legitimate count of ballots in Atlanta. All of these things happening all at the same time, and she just told you what it's all about. All of it is really just about, this is going to get him. Watch how she says it.
That part. It didn't surprise me. I'd started to gain faith, as Sunny would tell us, like, this is going to get him. And I was like,
This is going to get him. This is going to get him. Not truth and justice will prevail. Not we're a system of laws. Not the Constitution should be paramount. Not let's not disenfranchise tens of millions of voters in this country. Nope. It's all boiling down to, this is going to get them. And this is why they're losing, by the way. I know a lot of people get worried. I get upset. They get concerned. I do too. But the only way I wake up every day knowing what's going on in this country, the only way I'm able to get out of bed and not just engage in our society, but participate and articulate my ideas and hopefully persuade some people about what's great about this nation, the only way I'm able to do it is to have some sliver of hope that our Constitution does prevail. And that's what we saw today. And that's why they're so upset. If you know someone who gets their news from The View, could you please reach out and talk to them? Maybe share this video with them. so they can see exactly how misguided they are because of the information that they get from these women? A little bit more here.
But seeing it, I now get the chaos which would ensue. And I think it's important when you don't like the outcome, which I'm not saying I don't, but that you look at the states that you would disagree with and what they could do in turn.
Yeah.
So I look at a Texas and Governor Abbott. I look at a Florida and DeSantis. If you're okay with Colorado doing this, you have to then be okay with these states doing what we've already seen them do with counter trigger law.
Yeah, and listen, let me just say for the record, if the entirety of their takeaway here is, yeah, in the long run, maybe this wasn't a good idea because if it's okay for our state to do it, then we got to be prepared for their state to do it. Honestly, that's sort of a keep them honest kind of position to take, right? My dad used to tell me whenever you have a moral dilemma, if you don't see the answer in scripture or your church's teachings, and you're really torn about something, first of all, you probably aren't really torn about something. You know what the right thing and wrong thing is. But if you really think it's a dilemma, honestly, more often than not, moral decisions can easily boil down to a very simple thing that your parents probably told you when you were a kid, which is, what if everybody did that? What would society be like if everybody did that? And that does sort of clarify these things. What would our country be if every state did what Colorado did? And suddenly things get to be pretty clear, don't they? That said, I want to prepare you for a segment of The View that I can foresee coming up in late June or early July. Because you see, this is just the first decision that the Supreme Court has to weigh with regard to Donald Trump in this election year. As you know, last week, the Supreme Court decided to take up the question of whether Donald Trump has immunity from the charges Jack Smith has brought against him based on the speech he gave on January 6th. And it really does all boil down to the speech he gave and maybe some text messages and some challenges to the Electoral College process after Election Day in 2020, leading up to January 6th. The Supreme Court will hear those arguments in late April, and then they will render their decision the last week of June, I suspect. And if they side with Donald Trump, well, hold on to your hats, because it's going to make today's View reaction look like, an episode of Blue's Clues. Without the charm, of course. Whoopi Goldberg gave us a projection of what that's going to look like on Friday when they were sort of musing about what a president can and can't do with regard to immunity or not. And, well, I'll let Whoopi take it from here.
Well, the Supreme Court won't hear oral arguments until the end of April. Now, let's look at a scenario where the Supreme Court says, yes, he has that. He has all those rights. He is immune from everything.
Yeah.
You know what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
Whoa. He could throw every Republican in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, he could. I mean, no. This is not a good thing.
It's critically important that there was a smattering of applause there. The crowd thought that was a good idea. The left doesn't want to throw every Republican in jail. Only your leaders, or the ones that you want to vote for to be your leader. Only a good percentage of Republicans need to go in jail until the rest of you fall in line. In reality, the fact that this is the ultimate argument that Whoopi's got with regard to presidential immunity, I got a better scenario for you, and I will let's let her finish first, and then I'll give you the scenario of what could really play out with this immunity question. But here's how The View tackles this very important constitutional issue. And again, I just want to remind you, for many people in this country, this is their primary source of news, information, and analysis. What you're about to see. So it's no wonder why we're so divided. It's no wonder why we have so many ignorant voters in this country.
He could go. What this means is he could do anything.
Yeah.
He could dismiss everybody's debt.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole bunch of great stuff that could happen, but let's really look at what this means.
Yeah.
So they're basically kicking the can down the road, though. They're not taking up this case immediately.
Right.
So what's their motivation then? If we all know that they can't do what you just said because of the extreme power that a president would have, what is their motivation for not doing it right away?
Well, unfortunately, some people are saying the motivation is that there are certain conservative justices that have been appointed by Trump that want to help him.
I see you, Sonny Hostin. I see you, and I know what you're doing there. Did you see how she framed that? There are some people who say, that way, whenever it comes back to sting her, she can say, well, I didn't say it. I was just telling you what some people said. You want to really know what the Supreme Court's motivation is for scheduling the oral arguments the last week of April? You really want to know? I've got really, really insider information here. It's brilliant insight that you're really going to appreciate here. The fact that they're waiting about 7 weeks before they hear the oral arguments. It's because they've got a full load of cases that they've been hearing since the first Monday of October. And they've got a ton of cases that they have to get to. A ton of arguments that need to be regurgitated and decisions that need to be written. And generally speaking, if it weren't potentially affecting the presidential election, they would never hear this case right now anyway. They would put it off until next year. But because of the immediacy of this, they're actually jump-starting this and hearing it rather soon. Sooner than a good luck to you appealing something to the Supreme Court and getting oral arguments within 8 weeks of your petition. It doesn't happen. But somehow in Sonny Hostin's twisted little mind, this comes out as they're just trying to help Donald Trump. That's why they've delayed this. Bull. They're actually hearing it pretty quickly. But again, this is the kind of contempt that they hold the Supreme Court in. This is why you hear them say, as Keith Olbermann said earlier today, it's time to dissolve the Supreme Court or pack the Supreme Court. Remember how it was Donald Trump and MAGA fascist Republicans who were accused of undermining the institutions of the United States of America? Have you heard any of them undermine an institution like the Supreme Court the way they are here? Oh, but it gets even better. The reaction to this idea of whether President Trump has some level of immunity, if not complete immunity, from his actions as president of the United States, from civil or criminal prosecution.
And because we know the end result is if this case is not resolved by the time of the election and he, God forbid, becomes the president of the United States, the Justice Department policy is that you cannot indict nor put on trial a sitting president, right? And so it's his get out of
He could
jail
throw him
free.
in jail.
But it's his get out of jail free card.
No, I'm saying Biden could throw.
Yeah,
See,
Biden
this
could
is
do
a
that.
slippery
It does,
slope
but
because if they give him this immunity,
What's good for the goose
What I
is
also
good
will
for
say
the
is they're listening to these arguments in April. The end of their term is in June, right? They return again, I believe, in October. The Bush v. Gore case happened real quick. Do you remember that? The Supreme Court knows how to work real fast.
That was the day democracy died.
By the way, this is the best. You election deniers out there, you Republicans, and here's Joy Behar saying that the Bush v. Gore was the day democracy died because the election didn't go her way. She's still a denier from 2000. Yeah, I wonder why the Supreme Court operated so fast there in December of 2000 in Bush v. Gore. Oh, maybe it was because a new president constitutionally had to be inaugurated by the third week of January. I'm sorry, but you bring criminal charges against a former president and the nominee for president, who is currently the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party. This is what happens because you're violating every single legal norm we've ever had in this country. Maybe the Supreme Court's going to be a little circumspect and make sure that they look at all of the facts in the matter before they come up with a decision, because it's not just about Donald Trump, as Whoopi Goldberg clumsily stated there. This is setting a precedent for the United States of America going forward, or for that matter, looking backwards. You see, I don't know. If it turns out that a president doesn't have immunity for their actions or their speeches during their presidency, I'm thinking the family of Laken Riley might have a wrongful death suit against President Biden for his border policies, or maybe for denying her civil rights, if it's a civil case instead of a criminal case. And speaking of denying someone's civil rights, if I remember right, Barack Obama approved of a counterterrorism and counterintelligence investigation of Donald Trump as candidate for president, all based on a fraud that he knew about. John Brennan, the CIA director, actually informed Barack Obama that Hillary Clinton was peddling the Steele dossier full of lies about Donald Trump. And Obama, after Trump had won the election, Obama gave the green light for a continued FBI investigation into Donald Trump a week before he was inaugurated. You think Donald Trump maybe has a lawsuit against Barack Obama? Now, Barack Obama will say, you can't do that. You can't sue me. I was just doing what I thought was in the best interest of our country, acting as president of the United States. I have immunity. And of course, Donald Trump will say the same thing. I believed that our Constitution was being undermined. I believed that the electoral process was corrupted. This wasn't about me winning. It was about protecting the Constitution and the integrity of the democratic process used by various states to determine their electors to the Electoral College. Period. It's over. Of course, he has immunity. And we should want it that way. What's really instructive here is that when Whoopi Goldberg needed to make a case to explain the danger of presidential immunity, instead of the rather benign examples I just gave you, she had to go all the way to, well, Joe Biden could just arrest every Republican. They are warped. They are absolutely warped, damaged individuals.